This is Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. An informal chats with top business moguls as they share their stories of failure and success in a fun and relaxed way. Get entertained, educated, and unlock the secrets to success.
Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. I am delighted to have a very special friend and guest to the program, Lucy Billingsley, the founder and partner at Billingsley Company. Lucy, welcome.
Thank you, Ronnie. It's a treat to be here.
It is quite an honor to have you on the program. We're celebrating our 1-year anniversary.
Yay.
We began about a year ago, and you might not know this, but the breakfast that you joined me with the CEO of Southwest Airlines was really the start of the program. I had a film producer who approached me after the breakfast that I had and said, Ronnie, you should have a podcast that helps business leaders grow and evolve and change and figure out ways to better manage their business. And you were there with me. I appreciated you joining me. That's been quite a few years ago now. But to have you on the anniversary program is just a real treat.
Well, you're very kind.
Now, you own a real estate and development and a commercial development company that's by far one of the best development companies, I would say, in the country. I know you mostly focused on Dallas, but I've been to your office. In fact, so Lucy, again, welcome. I'm excited to have you that I'm skipping for it so often. But you invited me to your office one day for coffee, and I came by, and we both ended up having orange juice. But you have such a great office, a really neat culture. What you've done in the community in North Texas is just astounding from a development standpoint. And as I mentioned to you, I used to work in residential development. Right. So I admire what you're doing. I love driving down the street, and I always look to see who's the builder or developer on a piece of property. And I've seen your name on some really neat products, but in buildings. So tell us what you do, Lucy. How did you started the company in 1978? So you started when development was still kind of young-ish, from a production development and big projects, and you were probably one of the first females to have a development company. Not to bring up gender, but it's just amazing to me. I was watching a program with Martha Stewart recently, and what she did in those early days in building her company and becoming the first billionaire in the United States, which is just amazing to me. But how and why did you start the company, and what is it that you do?
Well, my dad was in real estate, and so when he was building things, he would put things in our names. And so I have 5 brothers and one girl. And so I came by it naturally. And since he put things in our names, I started off with a few assets. Okay. When my husband came to Dallas, he came to work for my dad's company. And then when we got married, he went off on his own. And then shortly thereafter, or a few years thereafter, we joined in together. So Henry's a raw land guy, buys large tracts of land around the city, and I was running the Dallas Market Center at that time. Okay, I was a family business, part of the family. It was stuff that Dad had done, and Henry was doing raw land, and then at some point in 91, 92, I ended up leaving the Market Center, and joined in with Henry, and saw this land and thought, you can't just keep selling it, buying and selling. We've got to build on this. And so then that's when we jumped into the development business, first with offices up at what's now Bush and the Tollway. Okay. And then multifamily just north of there. In Dallas, so now, straight up Dallas. I'm
sure you have a few fun projects that just stand out for you. Now, do you? Yeah. Is there anyone that you think of? That one was a lot of fun. What most people don't realize, having been in construction, they're complex. You've got to get city approvals, and you have to get investments on, and then you have to develop the land, the infrastructure before you can build. And it's a lot of work. But is there anything that stands out as just a fun and exciting project that you've done?
Well, usually the answer to that is the next project, right? Right. The creative process is fabulous. Yeah. When we bought about 1,300 acres and plus a lake of Cypress Waters. So this is land in Dallas, just north of the airport. And it was used to be a power plant. So it had, large lake on it, and then 700-acre lake, which we then shrank to 300 acres. Right. But when you come into a piece of property like that, you're right. It takes years to get the zoning and how do you organize the utilities and the infrastructure. But the planning of it is fabulous because you're creating the public realm.
You are.
And this lake has a 6-mile trail system running around it. You've got obviously parks and sculptures and the public realm is what defines the place.
Right.
And then you come in with the buildings and the style and the richness that they add to it. But creating the public realm really is a thrill.
I remember when I first joined the construction company, development company, we had a groundbreaking at a huge parcel of land in Carlsbad in San Diego area. And I went out for the groundbreaking. It was just raw dirt. They started the grading already, but it was just raw dirt. And then a few years later, after we built a lot of the homes, I see the families in the homes with the kids playing, and I see the park and the kids playing, and there was just so much delight in seeing that location built out and the families just enjoying their lives. And I suspect that's what you're speaking about.
Oh, absolutely. At this particular place, again, 300 acres of water in Dallas is a treasure. But then we've put a sound stage next to the water. We've got the retail. We've got a little putting green, and the trails. It is a very high energy fun place. And you create all of those amenities, and then corporations want to come there too.
Right.
And then obviously the residential.
And the Dallas market, so you mostly focus on Dallas, or have you expanded outside of the region and the state?
For these kinds of developments, we're really just the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
Okay.
We've got industrial in Houston and Chicago, but...
Okay. Yeah, in this Dallas market, I moved here in 2019. I moved an office here from Platteville, Wisconsin, back in around 2014 or so, because we did national search, and we were told by our partner, CB Richard Ellis, that the Irving and that North Texas market was a great place. But this area has grown so much. There are over 50 different corporate headquarters of Fortune 500 companies here, and it's just expanded. And it sounds like you've been a part of that growth and that evolution. 1,300 acres is a huge parcel of land to acquire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've certainly been beneficiaries of all of this growth. We've got several parcels that are that size. So we've got some Austin Ranch is another one of the developments. We've got a lot of land in McKinney. And 3 of our kids are in the business.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We've got a lot of people with a lot to accomplish.
Now, what is that like when you start? There must be so much pride in bringing the kids into the business. I have a almost 20-year-old that is in college now, and being able to leave a legacy to the kids and watch them evolve into adults is just an amazing experience, I presume.
Oh, it's so fun. I mean, right when they step out of college, and even in college, they're really defining themselves as an adult.
Right.
Yeah, obviously, what drive and focus they have, ambition.
Right.
All of those traits are very formidable at that time. And so for us, we did the same thing that my parents had done for me. We put our assets in the kids' names. I just said, you've go find a better opportunity than this. and so we're really lucky. And you do this, you create these things for the purpose in your life, for the richness in your life, but for the richness of your children's life.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think leaving that legacy is so important. That's part of the reason that we created the program, because I kept thinking as I was talking to the producer, how do we continue to leave that legacy? I'm getting older now, and I realized that my daughter and the people that are in those next generations, they are, it sounds cliche-ish, but they are totally the future. How do we give them the lessons that we've learned, as a part of this journey? And so it's been fascinating to watch my daughter evolve.
Yeah.
But I know in that vein, I know we had a conversation, it's been a couple years ago, but we were just talking about kind of that aging process and at what point you feel like you've made it and done well and you feel confident about it. And you were saying that at about age 50 or so, that's an important kind of milestone, right? Where you think, all right, I think the same now. I think, every day I look at it and I think, all right, do I have that confidence? How do I benefit from the experience that I've now gained? And how do I go to that next level? And it gets tricky. There's some days I think when you get to that point, when you turn 50 and you think about your journey and your experience, you start to realize that you've got the confidence, you have the experience, and then you just need to go for it, right? You continue learning the process. But I remember having that conversation, excuse me, and it was such an inspiration for me to talk to you and kind of learn from from that journey. What's next for the company? Like, where do you see yourself growing at this point?
I'll step back on your other comment first. I was motivated by fear really until my early 40s.
Yeah.
Can I do this?
Yeah.
I'm obviously lucky. I've obviously, got a head start and with been having some assets put in my name by my dad, married a guy in the business. I'm lucky. Can I do it? And finally, after I'd done some of these office buildings, I thought, I can, and some apartments. Mm-hmm. And so once I decided I could, I thought, what am I going to be motivated by now?
Right.
I'm not scared.
Right.
And so I had to go redefine my motivation. And,
interesting.
And it's clearly I'm motivated by purpose. I want to lead a purpose-filled life. And then it became that purpose, and how can I add to the business in a different way than others? How can I hopefully improve our environments and people's lives? And so then it became a motivation of that and that constant creativity going forward. And at age 50, I was emancipated. At 40, I got over fear. At 50, I said, I'm not going to do things I don't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
I'm going to do really, and that's not true. Of course, we do things we don't want to do, but I let go of a lot. I was able to focus my life much more pointedly.
Yeah.
So now your other question was, what's next?
That's a great piece. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were asking me something that was important but not huge. And I remember saying, I don't really care to that degree. Like, let's just go do it. Like the reservation is gone. And there was a quote that you made me think of that I wrote some time ago, and it says, "For some, fear can be debilitating. For others, it can be motivating. The key is facing the fear without fear." Yeah. Like, sometimes we have that reservation that keeps us from making certain decisions or taking the next step, and you just got to get over it. What I've also found, though, is that it can sometimes be, it can push you to move forward, right? That little fear, like, am I good enough? Am I ready?
Yeah, right.
And then sometimes you just need to say, okay, I'm going to go for it.
Gotta go for it. There are a lot of paper walls out there. You just have to run through them.
They are. Your office, though, as I mentioned, you've built, one of the items that we discussed with the CEO of Southwest Airlines was their culture. And I think I remember commenting that you built an incredible culture. Just seeing what you've done, the environment, the people are happy and motivated. And how do you think culture fit in what you're doing and just creating an environment that people want to be? I love being in your office, by the way. Just the artwork was incredible. It's just amazing.
Lovely. Thank you. People talk about culture so much. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's not about reading books or having strategies or any of culture is easy. I just respect people.
Right.
And I don't want to be managed. I bet other people don't want to be managed. Yeah. So I don't want to manage people. Right. I want to team together. I want to have a common vision, and I want to run down the road. And I have high expectations of people, right. And I have high expectations of young people. Age is not the issue at hand.
Agreed.
And sometimes my expectations are wrong. I'm thinking somebody's going to go accomplish things that they're not.
Right.
And I like people, and I want to have fun.
Right.
And at work, we're very casual. Now the dog comes to the office. We're very casual in our relationships, but not in our focus, our purpose, or for me, even in attire.
Right.
I want to set a high standard.
Right.
And I think rules are for other people.
Right.
I want to, if somebody tells you, here's the industry standard, I want to say, so what?
Right.
Exactly. I want to set a different standard. How do we get there? And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't.
Right.
But at least our approach is to reach.
Right. Now, I forgot about the dogs.
Yeah, Shadow's at the office right now.
I love it. I love it. And so is it just the one that you have in the office?
No, my daughter brings her dog Bacon. And then sometimes Skip brings Theo. Shadow, with great disdain, can endure Theo.
I love it. So many companies are now offering pet insurance and pet-related products at their companies.
I had not heard about that. Don't put that on the air. I'll end up having to go there.
Now, when I read about your work in the industry, they often refer to you as pioneering. And I think what you just mentioned is a reflection of that you're not willing to go with the industry standards just because they're the industry standards. Like, how do we push the boundaries and do more? Which is representative, I think, of that pioneering. I think I mentioned to you off air that I was looking at innovators, people in the real estate industry that they've done a lot. And I know they often refer to Barbara Corcoran, who's been on Shark Tank. She's done real estate as kind of the queen of real estate in New York. You are absolutely, without question, the queen of real estate in Dallas and Texas.
You're kind.
I love your innovation, though. I love what you're doing. And as I mentioned, when I see your product, absolutely brilliant product. How do you continue to stay ahead of the curve? Like, how do you continue to innovate like you do?
You're kind to say those things. Here's what we try to do, and we see to what degrees we succeed. But when we're building office buildings, not in the beginning. In the beginning, I did just what the industry said, right, this is what you do. But then we said, no, Texas does not have an architectural style for office buildings.
Right.
But Texas does have great roots in architecture.
Right.
So why don't we bring the stones and the steel and the standing seam metal or the balconies? Why don't we bring these things and create a world-class architectural style for Texas? Right. So we've worked with a lot of different architects with office buildings to do that. If we're jumping into apartments, I mean, there's so many horrible-looking apartment buildings.
Agreed.
And they have no architectural style.
Right.
We want to speak of a style.
Right.
It could be a French townhouse. It could be industrial. But we want these places that we create to be infused with the richness of fine architecture.
Right.
We're getting ready right now to step into the build-to-rent arena.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there you see so many ugly homes. And
I agree with you.
And I mean, we have to respect the financial parameters.
Right.
We can't run out here and spend money to make it pretty and not be realistic. Mm-hmm. But with some thought, we think we can come in with much higher integrity and richer home.
That's amazing. Why expand in that market? I know a lot of builders are expanding in that space as well. Yeah.
Well, we, as I've said, have bought a lot of land. And in some instances, we could sell it to somebody else for single family, or jump into this arena. And in multifamily, we have our own construction company. Oh, cool. So it's pretty easy. We're pretty set up to be able to go do this.
That is amazing. And you're right about the architecture side. That I found, at least in my building, you can build. If you do it right, you can build a very attractive, pretty home and community as you would one that's just not. So why not invest the creativity in creating something that people would enjoy?
That's right. Think about it a tiny bit. Flip that brick around. I mean, whatever the detail is.
Right.
It's just a little bit of care.
Yeah. Now, I can say that of the industries I've worked in healthcare and technology and home building and construction. The home building industry, I absolutely loved it. We were a production builder, building about 50,000 homes a year. When I moved to California, you talk about different architecture by region. Moved to California, used to brick on the East Coast, full brick. Get to California, they're building with thin brick, but it's just for the aesthetics. Right. The homes were fabulous, but I thought, what is that stone? And they were very different and creative in how they use stucco and brick and stone, and it was such a fun process. At one point, we decided to change our supply chain approach. And we created about 30 plans and elevations that we thought we could mass produce at a higher level of quality, even using fewer materials. And it was a fun project to figure out how to be creative and saving costs while increasing the quality and increasing the efficiency of the production process. It was just so much fun. In fact, for one of the projects, we purchased this land that at the time was a pretty big purchase, several thousand acres of land, about $1 billion in cost for that land at the time. It was such a neat place to be. One of the properties we purchased through auction from the federal government.
Oh, that was a good deal.
Oh gosh, it was just a fun process. I had a chance to spend some time learning more about Conrad Hilton and visiting his first hotel out in Cisco, Texas. But just the thinking through your innovation, to see how he innovated the hotel industry, it's awkward to think that hotels at a certain point didn't have a refrigerator in it and some of the new amenities. And I presume that you're doing something similar with creating the kind of welcoming environment as the market changes, as the consumer change. How do you create that innovation? So it's kind of neat to think about what you've described in your innovative process.
No, it's fun.
Yeah.
And now our kids are off doing it. So they've been bitten by the bug.
Now, and this might be, maybe too detailed, but is there an idea that one of the kids brought up that kind of changed your philosophy on anything? Like when I listened to my daughter, I learned so much from her. Mm-hmm. And because her experience is different from mine, we didn't have iPhones when I was little or some of the apps. And so she'll bring an idea and I'm thinking, you know what? That makes sense in today's time. But have they brought something to you that you thought, well, this is a change from what I've seen and what I thought was possible. That is brilliant.
I think that they all bring something. Each of them have huge strengths in different areas. But just speaking to the design arena, our daughter Sumner has really raised the level of all of the public arenas, leasing centers, club rooms.
Nice.
All of the amenities that residents, mailroom. Okay. I just saw a new mailroom that she did yesterday.
Right.
You think you're in a library.
Oh, love it.
So I think raising the bar there is a gift to all these residents.
Right.
And it's not. Yeah, I was about to say it's easy to do. It's not. She spends a tremendous amount of thought in it with the designers. But now with Pinterest, when Pinterest hit the streets, we instantly went there and we changed our relationship with all the architects and interior designers. Because we go to Pinterest, we pull our images from wherever, put them onto Pinterest, set up boards, and then we can say to the architect, "Here's where I want to go," or to the designers, interiors, "Here's the look that we're after." And it saves everybody time, and we end up delivering the product much closer than what we would have in years gone by.
That is amazing that you use Pinterest in that perspective. So you make it easier for the architects to kind of understand the vision for the property. Are you using any other technology like that kind of helps to facilitate? I know for us back, it's been 20 years since I worked in home building, but we were converting to an auto pay for our accounts payable process. We were starting at that point, and this was all new back then. It's easy today, but we were starting to contract electronically. I used to have stacks of documents, legal size pages. It seems like 10-point font, but so much has changed to make that process easier. Pinterest, I hadn't thought of that from a design and using it perspective. That's brilliant.
But all of those things that you mentioned, we do use, so we have lots of software, more software than we use well enough.
Right.
We need to be smarter about how to best use it. But right now we're diving into, like everyone else in the world, how's artificial intelligence going to leverage our business?
Interesting.
And we're just diving in, but our approach is to get everybody in the company to say, what are the questions that you've wanted to have answers to, but you just couldn't get them from data collection or whatever. If it's work order management, or if it's design, if it's search on legal documents, whatever it is, what are the questions? And we've pulled those together, at least a first pass at them, and then I put them all into Chat GPT and said, which ones of these can you answer? Will large learning language models be able to answer? And then it critiqued all of our questions. And then he said, what data will you need to be able to deal with it? And so we're honing this down, popped it back to the team. Now start setting priorities, because we're going to figure out how to get rid of these these issues that marketing.
Right.
I mean, how do I know who's going to be up hunting for an apartment?
Right.
How do I know, what people really want in, apartments? I mean, I can ask surveys, but I want to be smarter than that.
Right.
And so there are many questions that I think we'll be able to understand in a very different way in the next 5 to 10 years? Is somebody going to move out? Is somebody going to be bad pay?
Right.
How do we learn these things and think about them in totally different ways? So I think we're about to change. Our industry is about to change all of us a whole lot.
That is incredible. It's neat seeing that innovation because, again, my experience was several years ago, but back then, most builders, especially the large production builders, had design studios. So the homeowner would come in, they pick their different finishes and the items they like in their home. And then we did something that at that time was a little revolutionary. We decided that we'll make the decision on what the homeowner wants. We'll call it everything's included. So because the way we spec the home, we could buy the products at a greater volume.
Right.
We put it in the homes and try to keep the cost down so they're getting a much better product. They have fewer choice options. And it turned out great. I loved it. And so the problem that a lot of people have on the home building residential side is they walk into the model home, they see all these beautiful items. And then when they sit down to price out all the extras, the extra costs, they're like, I can't, that just isn't going to work. So when we created that model from a marketing, it was incredible. I loved it. Yeah. It made it so much easier to talk about our homes and the value that a homeowner might get. So what you're doing
the value is enhanced.
The value is enhanced. So it sounds like you're doing something similar in today's new age style of doing it using AI. I think so many people are just kind of confused and cautioned by AI because you don't know how to necessarily incorporate it. Yeah. But you're figuring that out as well.
Well, we're jumping in.
I love it.
We'll see how much we learn.
That is absolutely incredible. And so, Lucy, it's next 5 years. What do you think? You're still innovating using AI. You're still looking at new properties. One of the big items on our side was backlog on the residential side, but it sounds like you have good land position, and you probably have the next several years mapped out.
Well, fortunately, since we do have large land holdings and zoned land, we could stay busy for the next 10 years without looking up. But that's not what we want to do. We want to, learn how to grow and create and become better. And also our kids, they're in their 40s. So, they're running their own businesses within our company. And so I don't do the things I used to do because now they do all that. Henry doesn't either. So now I've been reinventing myself.
Okay.
And I've got to keep figuring that out. But the build to rent's a new product category for us. Sure. We're also studying 55 plus active living. Right. And I think that we'll probably end up in both of those businesses.
Oh, that's pretty neat. We did something similar some years ago. We found that a lot of the homes were becoming multi-generational. And I hear that that's coming back again with being able to bring in both kids and grandparents into the home, kids after they finish college. But that was a huge deal back when I was in, and we started redesigning our home space around that as well. So It seems like a good new business segment for you.
Yeah.
I know we're nearing the end of our program, but when you look back at 1978, when you first really got started, how has the world and the business changed for you? Just to kind of give some perspective, my daughter was born in the 2000s, and sometimes I have to go back and order. She called me the other day, and she asked me an interesting question. You might find this, I'm sure you've gotten some of these from your kids when they were in college. But she asked me, when I was in college, something really easy, if you were going to an event as a student, and it was an event sponsored by another student, what food would you have? And I thought, that's a really fascinating question. I had to think about it. And I said, pizza would probably be number one and maybe donuts. And she's finding that today they serve bagels maybe something a little sophisticated. But and I'm not sure exactly why she was asking, but I think she just needed a perspective as a comparison point.
Right.
But what would be your comparison point between 1978 when you started and where you are? I know you've got the kids in it and you've done so much, but I can only imagine what those early days were like, just getting ramped up and, the learning that you had back in those days.
When I first got in the business, I was doing I skipped some of the early on things, but I was doing cold calling and retail brokerage work in Houston. And then I came back to Dallas and went to work for the Dallas Market Center. Yeah. And I was there for 15 years and running that business. And so that was a very specialized kind of real estate.
Okay.
But even just making the cold calls, doing the retail, you're in your car, you're looking up addresses, you're knocking on doors.
Right.
Now I'm going to Google Earth.
Okay.
I'm going to Placer AI.
I love it.
I have so much data. I can go any place and understand and clip the speed of with which we can move now. And the information. I don't know if you played with Placer AI, but you can circle a location and get the history of how many people have been there over the last day or the last 5 years. And so when we have public events at the Cypress Waters at the Sound at our sound stage, I can tell you how many people came, last night, or how many people were this year versus last year. And where they came from.
Wow.
I mean, their cell phone has to be there for 7 minutes.
Wow.
I don't know who they are.
Sure.
But the knowledge with which we can work now enables us, I think, to be much, much better in what we deliver.
Right. Now, I have to say, I know we're at the end of our program, Lucy, but I don't know if I've seen a CEO founder in your capacity and role that is so engaged in that type of new technology at this point. It's just to hear you talk about your use of that information to help you run the business and guide the business is incredible to me.
Well, my husband has never had a computer, so they've got the yin and the yang of it. But I love it. Yeah,
that's amazing, and Lucy. I am so grateful and honored that you would join us here on the Business Decoded program.
A pleasure. What fun it's been to chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Thank you for listening to Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. Please be sure to subscribe and share and stay tuned for more incredible Business Decoded episodes.